Welcome to another Time Out with Tackle What's Next, where we speak to athletes and executives about how sport has made a difference and changed the course of their lives and the lessons they've learned in life outside of the game. I'm your host, Danielle Berman, the founder and CEO of Tackle What's Next, where we help athletes find their purpose and create impact in life after sports and help them prioritize themselves in life after the game. We've been off for a couple of weeks, but we are so excited to be back here with another awesome guest. Tonight we are chatting with Taj Deshawn. He is a former D1 football player for Stony Brook University. After he played his last game of football, Taj struggled with mental health, experienced some depression. He really just hadn't developed that clear vision for his life after the game. So now it's his personal mission and passion to reach out and help others overcome the fear, frustration, and uncertainty associated with life post-sports. He's the author of Thrive After Sports and a host of the Thrive After Sports podcast, and he's involved with an organization called Self-Publish in 30 Days, which is awesome. So make sure you check that out. We'll be chatting with him, and I see he's here. We're going to bring him right on screen, but so excited to have everyone tuning in. Hey, how's it going?
Hey Danielle, what's going on? Good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. Thanks so much for jumping on. It's great to see you.
Yeah, I know this. What is this? Twice in 2 weeks or 1 week? Yeah,
Right. Exactly. Well, it was funny. We were talking, a couple weeks back that it had taken us so long to actually physically connect, like on Zoom or over the phone, before we were just chatting like on LinkedIn or seeing each other kind of in passing. So it's now we've connected. We got to keep this going.
yeah, we got to see each other at least once a week. That's the minimum. That's the
there
standard.
There you go. Got it. Exactly. We'll just book a time in the calendar. I love it. Well, Taj, thanks for jumping on. We really like to start by talking about kind of what this last year and a half has been like for you, being an entrepreneur, running your own initiatives. Tell us a little bit about what changed, what you had to kind of change or pivot. I hate to use that word, but it's the best one in the last year and a half with all the work you're doing.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Like you said, I know it's been a wild ride for a lot of people out there. One thing specifically with me, especially with the work I'm doing with transitioning athletes, is I had a lot more people reaching out. So it's kind of one of those, if you build it, they will come type scenarios.
Yeah.
I've been doing athlete transition coaching since 2017, started the podcast in 2019 and just wrote the book, got it right here behind me, in 2020. And the thing that I've seen is, of course, a lot of athlete seasons, they ended prematurely. So I had a lot of people reaching out like, hey, Taj, I expected to have another year. My season got cut right in the middle. I'm lost. I'm struggling. I don't know what to do. So it's kind of like I'm grateful that I had already stayed consistent enough with this type of work, the work that you and I are both very passionate about, to where I could actually serve athletes in this capacity. And I was able to be at a point where I could actually have the resources and enough knowledge about what I'm doing to be able to serve anyone who came my way and was needing help. So that's the first thing. On a personal level, like you mentioned in the intro, connecting with Self-Publish in 30 Days, writing my first book, coming on board as vice president with that company, helping athletes tell their stories to the world. That's been a beautiful thing too. I never saw myself being vice president of a publishing company, but I'm loving how it ties into everything that I was already doing. And I'm able to have an even bigger impact on the athlete community. So it's been a lot, but there's some good things. I know it's not popular to say, but as tough as this pandemic has been for some people, I feel that it's been great for me on a personal level, and also in a sense that I've been able to serve at a greater capacity, which that makes me feel good. I'm not ashamed to say that. It's been great.
Yeah, well, and I think you hit the nail on the head that there are a lot of unforeseen benefits of, the kind of ability to sit and focus and kind of reevaluate where you are, where you want to go. We saw the same with just a lot, especially of college athletes or athletes that were kind of, not guaranteed to continue to play for a couple more years, to say, well, I expected to have at least another season to go. And I think, just a lot of us were in the same boat as they were, kind of sitting and going, oh my God, what are we going to do for the next 6 months? Of course, we thought it was only going to be 6 months. Right now, it's been at least a year. So it's really good to hear you say that, because I think a lot of people probably have experienced some sort of benefit or like clarity during this time. And I think it's good to embrace that and run with it. So I want to talk about, before we go back and talk about how your sports journey unfolded, tell us a little bit about Thrive After Sports. Tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing with Self-Publish in 30 Days and what, how that came to be.
Yeah, so that it's always funny. I'll start with this. I officially started putting myself out there in 2017 going into 2018 as an athlete career transition coach. A lot of people were like, what is that? And at the time, obviously, transition, the idea of athletes struggling when they're no longer playing is more in the conversation now. But you know this, Danielle, back then it was brand new. So people were like, what are you doing? And then as time went on, people started to understand this is a challenge. So really in 2019, even though I started in 2019 when I started the podcast, was really when a lot of people started reaching out, wanting to do work. A lot of different organizations wanted to actually sponsor the athletes that I was working with, which was really cool. So that began a journey of me just really focusing and drilling down and figuring out how can I expand. And then the whole position with Self-Published in 30 Days came about totally by accident. And you know this better than anybody, Danielle. When you're trying to help someone else, you end up helping yourself.
Absolutely.
I had a guy I was working with. This guy was a former overseas basketball player. He was like 5 weeks into my program, and he was like, Taj, I want to write a book. And so I'm like, okay, man, I'm going to help you. I'm going to reach out to my network, see who I can find, see who does, who's working with publishing or anything in that space. I got connected with Self-Published in 30 Days, #1 self-publishing company in the world. Got the book done for my client, and then I hit it off with the owner of the company. He's a former football player. He's like 10 years older than me. He's like, Taj, I see a lot of my younger self in you, and I saw a lot of my future self in him. So he was like, I love what you're doing, but I think you need to write a book first and foremost. And at first I was kind of hesitant. I'm like, I don't really know if I'm in a position to write a book. And he's like, if you write a book, you can help so many more people than you're helping right now. You'll have a much broader impact. And as you can see, I listen to that advice because there it is back there. Once again,
Yeah.
I keep it behind me at all times. Sometimes I have to pinch myself like, yes, I actually wrote a book. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. But yeah, I wrote the book through the company, and then he actually offered me a position to come on board as vice president, which was, that wasn't in the picture. He just said he felt led to do it. He's a very religious, very spiritual man. He said God put it on his heart to bring me into what he was doing so that I could expand what I was doing and have a broader impact on the athlete community. So that was last year, right around the same time I released the book. I came on board. We've been able to do a lot of great things. It's not just me being a solopreneur anymore. I have a team behind me. I have people supporting my vision and my mission. They've been great. And also we've been able to help a lot of athletes, current and former athletes, tell their stories to the world, publish their books and launch speaking careers. It's just been a great ride, and I'm grateful for every bit of it,
Wow, that's awesome. And that transition from solopreneur to team has to be a big adjustment. It's like, oh, I have to communicate with other people and make sure I approve things. And okay, it's not just on me. Like there's good. And then there's like, oh, I kind of forgot what it's like to like send something for approval. I'm not the approval person, so it's all those little things that change when you shift into that environment. But that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, I wanted to, sorry, I don't want to,
No, please.
I wanted to touch on what you said because I remember, shameless plug for anybody listening. If you want to hear me interviewing Danielle, we did a very in-depth interview.
Yes.
Subscribe to the Thrive After Sports podcast. Her episode is dropping, I believe, next week sometime. I'll have to double check, but stay tuned. You don't want to miss that because Danielle was bringing the heat like she always does. But one of the things that we were talking about is what you just shared, that solopreneur vibe to getting with the team. And it's funny because we were talking about this when I interviewed you, how as athletes, we go from being part of this tight-knit group, you got your teammates around, your support system, and then we go out into the world and we try to figure everything out by ourselves.
Yeah.
And I was in that mindset for so long, even in business, like, okay, I'm building a business, but it's my business and I have to do this and I have to do everything, instead of linking up with the team and learning how to win together again. So that's been the greatest thing, is I can lean on a team now. Like you said, it's refreshing, honestly.
Yeah, and it's so needed. I think, any entrepreneur thinking how far they want to go, you're going to go 1,000 times farther if you have other people that can support you. You can only go so far by yourself. So whether it's internships, whether it's independent contractors, like find those team members, find those partners, because that's how you grow and that's how you build. So thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned some of your sports experience and your athlete experience. So I want to go back. I want to talk about your first sports experience. What sports did you play as a kid? How did you end up choosing football, and what was that like for you?
The first sport I played was basketball. I was 5. That was cool. I think I only played 1 year, but I like being outside. I'm a really outdoorsy person. I love sunlight. So I immediately transitioned into soccer because I'm like, I was fast. I'm still pretty fast, even though I just turned 30, I still got moves. But when I think from like 5 to 7 or 8, maybe even 9, I played soccer. And then remember the Titans came out around the time I was like 10 years old. Yeah, I know you remember that classic. I think we're around
Absolutely.
the same age. So you know that one. And that I saw that movie in theaters with my mom and dad, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna play football. I want to hit somebody. I had a lot of energy, so I knew I was gonna play defense. I knew I wanted to blow somebody up and not get in trouble for it. So I started playing football at 10, and I was instantly hooked. And obviously, that carried me all the way through college. So yeah, that's the backstory on the football journey.
I love it. I mean, how could you not be inspired to go play football after watching Remember the Titans? That's probably a lot of people in our generation's origin story. It's like, I saw Remember the Titans and I was like, I want to do that. So
Definitely.
I love it. I love it. And it's funny. I feel like a lot of people that come on, no matter what sport they play, one of their first sports was always soccer. And I think that's really interesting because it sounds like soccer is the one that a lot of parents are like, go run around for an hour and get it out of your system. And everyone else is like, okay, this is great. Because I feel like we had a couple soccer players, two or three soccer players on who obviously stuck with it. Everyone else transitioned out, but soccer is like a constant theme. That's like a starter sport for everybody, I feel like. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's that foundation right there. That's a good point. I think parents are just trying to tire us out at a young age. In hindsight,
Exactly.
that's probably why they tried to put me in soccer, now that I
There
think
you go.
about
They're
it.
like, go run for an hour, come back, go to sleep. It'll be a lot better for us. Well, and Taj, what impact did football make on your life? Like, how do you see football showing up in the lessons you've learned and your work today?
Yeah, I think, and I'm biased obviously because I play football, but I think it is the greatest team sport. A lot of people are gonna be mad at me, but I think it's the greatest team sport because you are literally sacrificing your body for the guys to the left and to the right of you. Like when they talk about blood, sweat, and tears, it's actual blood, sweat, and tears that I've shed with my teammates through the years. So I think that kind of being able to work with people from all backgrounds, that still serves me today. You got, especially at the college level, people from all different walks of life, all different parts of the country. That's something that I still take with me to this day, where I feel like I can learn something from anybody. I can have a conversation with anybody, no matter what age you are, no matter what your race is, no matter where you come from. That connectedness is something I for sure keep with me from football. Also, just that, like I said, blowing people up. Like I'm someone who attacks my goals, and I'm someone who likes to, I almost like the challenge. Like when I started out doing this, like I was saying, nobody was talking about transition when you and I jumped into this a few years back. And being able to push past and continue with the missions is something that I definitely got from football. Just that go-getter mindset of I will not be stopped. I'm willing to literally sacrifice myself and throw myself wholeheartedly into everything that I do.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's such a good point. It's the challenge is almost like it's just like the game, right? It's like, okay, what do I have to do next to win? What do I have to do next to get to my goal? And so the parallels are right there. And I think the team aspect is so awesome for athletes of all sports, especially football, though, like you said. I think the other thing is you have such a unique role, each player on the field, and you have to mesh together. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And so I think that's an element too where football does really teach you about how to work with other people, because if one guy's out of position or doesn't do the right thing, the whole play is moot. So it's a really important to understand your role, which I think is helpful in your life. So as you transitioned to a former player, what was that like for you, and what motivated you to go into supporting athletes in transition? Like, what from your journey was like, I need to be in this space?
It was extreme. Well, I'll answer the first part. It was extremely challenging for me, and that's actually what led me to do the work. But I had to find myself first, so I had no idea I was going to be doing any of this type of work.
Yeah.
But my challenge was, I didn't have the greatest college career, so it's not like I thought I was going to go to the NFL. But I think I was just unprepared to no longer be Taj the football player. So when I came home, I really struggled. There was a lot of drinking. I was, extremely depressed for some time, and the problem was I was suffering in silence. I allowed myself to be isolated. I think if I would have opened up, I wouldn't even open up to my family about what I was going through at the time. Just like, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I don't even know where to start. I think even just vocalizing some of those things I said just now to the people closest to me would have made a big difference, but I kept it all up here. And I know a lot of athletes are prideful people, and they do keep it up there. And that's when it gets ugly because you're living in a vacuum. of your own challenges. So that's what I went through. Eventually, I started getting help, not even necessarily therapy, but just talking to people and getting guidance from people who had been in my shoes. So that was extremely helpful. I found myself in a successful career, but in recruiting. But I realized that a lot of people coming up behind me, and even some guys I had graduated with growing up, they were still struggling. So I saw a need, just like you, like, and it's going to take a village. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many of us who can go back and help. And I just decided that I was going to be one of those people to stand up and say, hey, I've been where you've been. These are some things that work for me. Try them out. And I'm just here to help. I look at myself as the person that I needed in my corner when I was going through those challenges.
Yeah, I think that's such a great kind of point to have, and that kind of vision of I'm trying to be the person that I needed. And I think that's a really awesome, thought and kind of vision to have. But you're right. I think there's so many challenges to navigating that next chapter, and a lot of it's all up here. And I think, and I want to ask you what you think, but in my opinion, I think athletes are really prepared for whatever they want to tackle next, so to speak. They have these skill sets that, you mentioned earlier: teamwork, understanding your roles and responsibilities, going after challenges that it's sometimes like the average entry-level employee just hasn't learned yet because they don't have that experience. And so I guess my question to you is, what are some things that you talk to the athletes you work with about breaking down up here, kind of translating those skill sets? What worked for you?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. Athletes can go anywhere and be the top person there, whether that's in business, in a job. I mean, if you take the athletic mindset and apply it to whatever you do in life, you're going straight to the top as long as you're staying consistent. But my whole message is you have to pick the right thing, right? I look at it like my first job out of college, I was selling copy machines for Xerox, like business to business, door to door. So, I'm 30 years old now. I just turned 30 last week or a couple of weeks ago now. So if you fast forward, I might be, if I had stayed with that, even though I was unhappy there, I might be like the regional vice president of copy machine sales. And sure,
Probably.
I'm sure the money's great, but at the end of the day, that's not what I'm here to do. And I really encourage people to find what they're here to do. And I don't even necessarily mean on some, because I think it's a touchy subject when you start talking about just follow your passion and things like that. I
Yeah.
think you have to be practical. I think you have to find a blend of things that interest you, but also places that you can serve, and also where you're needed, where you notice people need you to step in this role, and finding a way that you can do that that's true to you. So that's what I'm really about. I feel like there's so many transferable skills that athletes have. And if you can take that and pick the right thing, not just anything, not just what's going to give you a quick buck, then that's how you find success.
Yeah, that's such a good point. We get a lot of advice like follow your heart, follow your passion. And that's great. But if we all followed our passion, we'd all be travel bloggers or food bloggers, like, traveling the world. Like, that's what I'm passionate about. If I could get paid to travel to, all countries all over the world and just write about it, like, that's what I'd be doing. But there's
Exactly.
so many people out there doing that. And that's not where I'm like my best. That's not my best. That's where I'm probably enjoying myself the most. But, I think it's thinking about your strengths, right? Like you said, what can you do to serve others? What do people need from you? And what are you actually good at? Like, what are you uniquely best at that nobody else is? Like, it doesn't also have to be like, Excel or, organization. It could be like, I'm a problem solver. Like, I can put two and two together. I'm a connector. Like, those kinds of things. Like you said, if you understand yourself and what your impact you want to make is, that's where you can kind of dive into that next step. So thank you for saying that, because I think we get a lot of advice like, just follow your dreams, like, it's fine. And my dreams are taking me to a different country to eat pasta. Like, that's where I'm going. Like,
That's
so
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's such a great point. Just one more quick note on that,
no,
Danielle, because
please.
this is something I see too. And I used to think like that, right? You come out of college, 22, 23, I'm just like, man, I need some money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I did have that vision too. I just want to be on the beach with my feet up, just relaxing. But or I want to drive a Maserati. But at the end of the day, this is why I encourage people to be intentional about what they're building and who they're being in the world, because you can have all those things. Like, I think about it now, if I could just spend all day on the beach, I would be bored. I'd be like, is this my life? Or if I get a Maserati, that's cool. I'm driving a Maserati around, but then what? Like, what significance am I creating? What am I putting out to the world that's actually helping someone else? And that's the thing that's taken me so long to learn, is that's where you find fulfillment, is by helping other people in some way, shape, or form. And everybody has a gift if they just tap into it and figure out what that is and figure out what they want to do that serves someone else. And if you could tap into that, nothing but great things can happen for you as long as you're staying consistent.
Yeah, I mean, that's it right there. It has to be unique to you. It has to be something you're going to get up every day excited to give to the world. And if you think about it just for yourself, it might not be as successful as if you're trying to think about how can you help others. So great point. I have a couple more questions for you. You talked a little bit about your book. I want to hear more about the podcast. Why is storytelling so important to you, and kind of interviewing and having conversations with people around thriving after sports? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so I got to do another plug again for our episode, which is coming out very shortly. Stay tuned. Subscribe to Self-Publishing 30 Days podcast. We did a Power of Story episode, and we did a Thrive After Sports episode, dual purpose. But to answer your question, I feel like one of the things that, like, all I have is my experience, right? So like I told you the backstory behind the book and how that came about. And, the reason for that is I didn't want to write a book that was just an autobiography, but rather sharing my experience in a way that's going to help someone else. And the same thing applies to the podcast. I host multiple shows now, not just Thrive After Sports, but all the shows through Self-Publish in 30 Days too. Yeah. And anytime I'm in that host role, I'm always keeping, even if it's a solo episode, I'm keeping in mind when this releases, how is someone going to learn from this? It's not about, it's the Taj show and I'm just telling everybody, hey, look at me, check out all the great things I've done in my life. But anything that comes out of my mouth, it comes out with intention, and I hope that it helps someone. So that's how I could best sum it up. I just look at, not to make anybody sad, but, none of us are going to live forever. And when I leave this planet, I just want to have a long track record and paper trail of this is how Taj was trying to help. And even when I'm no longer here, I want things on record left behind where they're still helping people long after I'm gone. I don't even know if I answered your question, Danielle. You got me fired up over here.
You did, for sure, because I think that's, I get what Thrive After Sports and your other podcasts, right? We know logistically what that is. Like, it's podcasts, I can go listen to it. But to hear the backstory in your mind of like why you do it is, to me, answers the question perfectly, because that to me is going to motivate me to go listen versus like, oh, I interview people that are, writing books or doing things or sharing stories. Like, I want to know, like, okay, wow, he's going to be talking about what they're doing every day and what intentions they have and what they want to do to serve others. So yes, you absolutely answered my question. And I think personally, storytelling is a great way to learn. I'm like a podcast junkie. I consume so many and books and like all these things. Like, I want to constantly be learning. And I think that's something that clearly those people that are successful like yourself are constantly sharing stories, but also consuming and taking people's stories and saying, okay, what can I learn from this? What can other people learn from this? So it's a really great way to learn. It's that 10,000 hour rule, right? If you consume and learn and digest enough, you have to eventually implement, right? But you could be an expert if you actually take those skills and implement them. So it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing with some of these podcasts and storytelling.
Preach. You're over here giving a masterclass, Danielle.
There you go. Well, I want to ask just two more questions for you. One is, what advice would you give to athletes that are looking to make an impact in their next chapter? What can they start to do now?
I say it's funny because I did a live Q&A with Stony Brook last week, and I had a guy in there. He asked me the same question, and I told him, go find somebody to help. That's the first thing, because you can refine it along the way. I told you I started out in recruiting, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, but I'm gonna start helping people. And that eventually has been refined into helping athletes and now helping authors. And, you just get started helping. So I'd say you have to take your eyes off of yourself. If you need to, this is not to say to neglect. If you're going through something, you got to talk to somebody. Sure. It doesn't even have to be a therapist. Like I said, I wish I would have just talked to my family when I first came home and just let them know this is what I'm going through. It's better to get it out here instead of keeping it up here. So that's the first thing. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, doing what you need to do to be your best. And then from there, go find somebody to help. It doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter who. You can refine that along the way. But as long as you're being intentional about clarity, that word that you touched on earlier, Danielle, as long as you're acting with clarity and looking to serve, sky's the limit for you.
Yeah, no, I think that's so great, such great advice. And before we let you leave, you plugged the podcast, which we're going to be sharing too. So make sure you check out Thrive After Sports and the Power Storytelling podcast. But what else is coming up for you? I know you're now working with Self-Publish in 30 Days. You're also obviously doing some conversations with schools. You've got Thrive After Sports, continuing to work there. So tell us what's coming up for you and how can people connect, learn more, engage with you?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of exciting things on the horizon. I'm going to keep some of them under wraps for now. Otherwise, we might be on here for an hour if
I
I
was
tell
gonna
you all
say,
the
don't
exciting
spill
things.
everything. Just a couple.
Right. There's some more books. I have a co-author book coming out called Athlete to Entrepreneur. So that'll be my second book, and that's a
Right.
collection of stories. So it's myself and 20 other authors who are all former athletes, some of them current athletes also. All are doing great things out in the world, building businesses, have already built businesses. So keep an eye out for that. That's officially launching that's next month, actually, in May. That's
Nice.
coming out. Aside from that, yeah, just doing more speaking. Definitely wanted to do more virtual talks. I'm working on something right now with Stony Brook where they're talking about making my book part of the required reading. So that's
Nice.
exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, those are things I'm working on. Really also just helping more, not just athletes, but people in general. But you know me, I have a soft spot for athletes. So helping athletes tell their stories through the power of a book, right? And leveraging that for speaking engagements, leveraging that to build businesses. I'm just trying to serve. You can find me at tajlashawn.com. All the links to my social media are on there. Look up Self-Publish in 30 Days podcast, Author Spotlight, Power of Story. Thrive After Sports is available on all platforms. I'm not hard to find, Danielle.
No, we're going to put this all in the comments. Make sure you follow Taj. He's right here on Instagram. This is a great way to just connect with him if you aren't already following him. And thank you again for coming on Time Out. It was great to hear your story. Thanks for sharing some pieces of advice for our athlete and community members that'll be checking this out right now or later when they rewatch. And again, thank you for taking the time to be here with us. We really appreciated you coming on and chatting.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Danielle. Thank you for all the great work you do.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. It's exciting to always connect with people doing similar work with a similar, impact mission driven. It's awesome. So thanks, Taj.
That's right. Have a good one, Danielle.
All
Appreciate you.
right. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.